trappings. Like I always try to tell people, I'm kind of almost ass backwards with my martial arts thinking. In other words, I always tell people it should be fighting first, and all the other trappings you get come from that fighting. Like I always say, like, you know, if I was to come down to your gym for a week, okay, and we were to all be training together, I would leave feeling like I had a whole new family. Okay, because we'd all be in there, we'd be beating the snot out of each other, we'd be sweating, we'd be bleeding, we'd be doing everything together to try to help each other get to the next level. And then through that endeavor, okay, you get close to people, you learn about people. And I always say is, if you look at it as fighting first and the other things follow, I really feel you get so much more out of the martial arts. And it's kind of like I've been accused for years of not being a martial artist because of that belief system. Because I always try to tell people, like, you know, it's like I see these people, how do I phrase this? And it also comes to my leadership style. I believe in leading from the front. I don't believe like in my business, I run a financial business, and I always tell people, I'm not the boss. I'm here to lend you guys support, because if I make you successful as the leader, I'm successful. Okay, like I don't bark orders at people. I don't have people do anything I wouldn't do myself. And it's one of my problems with the whole like, you know, sometimes they call it traditional martial arts or whatever you consider. A lot of people tell you, they don't show you. In other words, like, you know, my guys, like, you know, when they want to compete, okay, it's kind of like they look at me and they see me at 57 years old running around the world competing, and they say to themselves, well, if he can do it, okay, he could use age, injury, whatever as an excuse, then why can't I do it? Like when they see me training and doing 10 rounds in the ring, and I'm expecting them to do 10 rounds, okay, and they can't say, oh no, okay, they go, like, you know, I always tell them, like, if an old guy that's playing around is in better shape than you got a problem. I'm 57 years old. If I'm in better shape than you, I don't want to be a fighter. I was a fighter. Okay, you guys are telling me you want to be fighters. If I'm in better shape than you might want to find a new career.
Hey, how old are you, Saya?
I'm 57.
57?
Yeah.
Wow, you're amazing. I have seen your videos, and you, as you just said, you look so tough and just so agile. Like, I mean, it's very like unique to have that experience for a lot of people here in Mexico that are like maybe 40 years old, 45, and they already feel old. So
honestly, I always say it comes back to the martial arts. In other words, if you look at guys like Dan Inosanto, the guy just turned 80 something. Okay, yeah, and it's kind of like he's still out there, and he's still. One of the things I really love about guys like him is he finds a hole in his game, and he devotes himself to making that hole disappear. Like, he discovers Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What does he do? He gets a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The man already has a lifetime in the martial arts. So he starts from scratch and learns a new martial art. And in other words, I always tell people it should be that this is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay. In other words, what I'm really enjoying more than anything right now about my journey is actually twofold. One is my body has changed. Now, I used to be a speed merchant. You know, I won my first title in Burma at 147. Then I won a title at 163, then open weight at 170. And 170 was my walking around weight. I was still fighting at 44 at 170 pounds. I was doing mixed martial arts and kickboxing. Okay. And then it's kind of like, I basically got sick. I had cancer. I recovered. But what happened is I had to change my diet. I'm a lifelong vegan. I always ate a fruit-based diet. So I was this tall, skinnier looking guy, still muscular, but skinny. Okay. And then I had to change from fruit-based diet to a nut-based diet, you know, because my body can't produce enough insulin anymore. So what happened is suddenly I started to get, you know, I started to pack on. I was always one of those guys. I would go to the gym and lift, and it was always hard to put weight on. Okay, suddenly it's like, you know, I'm packing muscle on like crazy. Now I actually walk around almost 220 pounds, and I have to cut down to 205. When I do a pro grappling show, I'll either do it as ultra heavyweight or I'll cut down to 205. And it's kind of like, I'm fascinated by the changes in my body. Now that I'm bigger and stronger, but I'm slower. I'm not as agile as I used to be. So I've had to adjust every aspect of my game, whether it's striking, whether it's grappling. You know, I used to be a guy who relied on my quickness. I knew in an exchange of punches, I was going to beat you to the punch. Okay, now all of a sudden I'm working my angles on my feet a lot more, because I'm at that stage of life where I don't want to get hit in the head as much. I'm not as willing to sit there and just trade punches. Okay, when I was a kid, I didn't care. Now as I'm older, like, I have 119 professional fights. I've got a touch of CTE, and I don't want to make it worse. So I'm very careful about not taking unnecessary shots to the head. So it's one of those things, as your body changes, you need to adapt your martial arts to your body's changes. You need to, like, I have a shoulder issue, I have a knee issue. I've had to adapt my game to those issues. And at the same time, I'm always telling my guys now, if I had one thing I could advise, I had my first fight at 15. If I had one thing I could advise my 15-year-old self, stop being an idiot and enjoy it. Okay, when I was 15 years old until basically I broke my neck at 26. I fought constantly from 15 to 26. I had to take a period of time off, almost 10 years, from 26 to 37. And then I came back at 37 and fought to 44. So what happened is, I always tell people, I was trying to be something I wasn't. You're a fighter, you're out there, you want to be the baddest man in the world, you want to be this, you want to be that. You're so busy trying to be something that you never sit back and enjoy it. Come on, you get in the ring at a high level. Like when I went up to do, they invited me to Submission Underground when I was 53. I went up for my first match at Submission Underground. It's a big pro show here in the US for grappling. And I'll never forget getting in that cage and just thinking to myself, man, this is the coolest thing in the world. I'm 53 years old. I'm standing up here. I'm all over the internet. There's like 1,500 fans in the audience, and somebody's paying me to play. Okay, it's kind of like I always tell people, that's the thing that a lot of us miss. Okay, we're fortunate to be doing what we're doing, and we don't realize it until it's over. I was fortunate in a way. I say I've had 3 careers. I had my first career where I was very successful, and it was, from 15 to 26. Then I had another career from 37 to 44. Okay, where I was more doing it to prove the doctors wrong, because they told me I'd never do it again.
Okay.
I wasn't as, like, my first time around, it's like I wanted to kill people. Like I was like, I'm gonna go out there and wreck people. If somebody took a rematch, I took it as a personal insult. Okay, it was about all the wrong things. It was a stereotype of a guy who put let's say fighting ahead of the martial art aspects. Okay, I was so concerned with winning that's all there was. Okay, then the second time around, it was almost like I was trying to prove something to myself and something to other people. And I always tell people, I look back on that as it was successful. I got a lot out of it, but it was almost a lost endeavor in that you can't prove something to yourself or somebody else. Okay, it's not a good reason to do something. Okay, so I retired again at 44, opened a big school, and then when I got sick, I got better at 52, and then I decided to myself, why not go out there and compete again? You love to do it. Okay, now this time I'm out there, and between you and I, wins and losses don't matter to me anymore. Of course, I shouldn't say that. Of course, winning is always better than losing.
Right, yeah.
Okay, definitely. But, and don't get me wrong, it feels great to be on the podium and have your hand raised. Okay, but I'll be honest with you, it's really come full circle for me. It's no longer about the result. It's about the doing. That moment where I'm standing across from you and the ref looks at me and says, are you ready? Looks at the other guy and says, are you ready? We both say, yeah, and we just go at each other and grab each other. That moment is everything. Okay, awesome. that it's a moment of purity. And when I say purity, in other words, it's me and him. Okay, suddenly it doesn't matter how many people are watching. everything fades away. And I'll be honest with you, in that moment, I really feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, the rest of it is all, yeah, I work to make money to provide for my family. But in that moment, I feel like I'm doing what I was created to do. It's kind of like that for me. Like, you know, I hear surfers talk about searching for the perfect wave. For me, that moment is my perfect wave. When everything melts away and there's nothing in the world but me and him trying to beat me and me trying to beat him. There's such a purity of that moment that I find nothing really is the same.
Okay, wow, it's so inspiring to hear you. I mean, I hope that I be like half of what you are right now when I get older. I feel you inspire a lot of people.
I'm telling you, I tell people all the time, if you stick with it and you learn to embrace the process. That's one thing that changes as you get older. Training may have been at one point, you know, I came up weird because I trained with a family member. Okay, so it wasn't really like, you know, it wasn't really a class. Okay, like when I started to teach, I had to learn to teach a structured class. For me, it was play. Like I used to go in the backyard and kick a wooden post in the backyard every day. Then we trained. Okay, and it's one of those things where it was like playtime. In other words, and I equated training as a kid with my grandfather loving me. Okay, you know, I got more of his attention if I trained. So I trained. Okay, because every kid craves approval. Okay, so what happened is it was kind of like as I got older, you know, it went from training being the way to fight to be training was something that I wanted to do on its own. Like
Okay.
right now, I can't, when work ends, I can't wait to go to train. Okay,
Awesome.
because it's kind of like, you know, there's one part of the day where I really get to lose myself. You know, I don't have to worry about, is this deal going to go south? Is this deal going to work out? Okay, you know, in other words, what's going on with this? Is the return on investment high enough? Is the yield enough? Okay, now all of a sudden, you know, I'm sitting there and it's kind of like, is this guy going to pull my arm off? Is he going to kick me in the head? Okay, and it's so much more simple. I just have to worry about keeping my hands up and not getting hit, you know? So it's like, it's one of those things. There's just such a purity of purpose when it comes to, you know, the fighting sports, the martial arts, you know, and for me, they're always the martial arts and the fighting sports are always so intertwined.
And so for how long have you been doing martial arts? How many years?
Between you and I would say my earliest recollections were training. So about 5 years old, I was doing it.
Wow, and you went to Burma, right?
I went to Burma at 15 to fight.
And how it was, your experience, how was it?
Now remember, it was a lot different than it is nowadays. Okay, I'll be honest with you. For a lot of people, I was one of the first Americans they saw since World War II. Because I was in the Kachin state, I was in the Wa state, I was in the Shan state. You know, I don't know if you know who Kun Sa was. He ran a lot of fights. I fought a few times. I fought a few times in Yangon, but I fought a lot in the ethnic regions. And it's one of those things. It was a surreal experience. Because remember, I was over there during the Sloat crackdown. And then I was over there afterwards. So it was almost like, you know, there were times I was over there and I was in active war zones, okay, where the rebel armies were fighting the government. So it was it almost felt like, you know, Alice in Wonderland. I was going to a place where I had all sorts of fascinating stories. Okay, and you know how, okay, a grandfather tells you all sorts of stories. Because he lived there, and my grandmother was actually Kachin. Okay, and the idea is it was.
Your grandmother was from Burma?
From the Kachin state, yeah, she was Jinpao.
Wow. Okay, so you have Burmese.
Yeah, I'm according to 23andMe, I'm 23%. Okay, not 25, but 23.
Awesome. All right. I didn't know that. Amazing.
Yeah,
okay.
Honestly, I always say that's why, like, you know, with racism, I always say, you know, how can you be racist when you can't tell what somebody has in their genetic code by looking at them? Okay, like my wife looks like the Nordic princess. Meanwhile, she's like, I think it's 15% black. Okay, yet looking at her and my kids, you would think they were posters for Hitler's army. Okay, they're all tall, thin, blonde-haired, blue eyes. Okay, so you can't judge a book by its cover. That's why I get such a kick out of it. But it's one of those things, like I tell people, it was like dropping into another world. Remember, it was a closed society. Okay, and I will tell you, it was such a unique place in that, how do I phrase this? The people were wonderful. Like when I say any region I went to, I love the people. The people are welcoming, they're nice people. They'll give you the shirt off their back. Okay, the government was some of the worst people in the world. Okay, it was such a story of I always say that power corrupts. It was such a story of the power of corruption. You'd go to a checkpoint and you'd see 14-year-old kids with an AK-47. Okay, and they were in the army, and it's kind of like, you know, I'll be honest with you, nothing scarier than a 14-year-old kid with an automatic weapon.
Right.
You know, no impulse control. So you know, I was over there during a very weird time of turmoil for a large part of it. But you know, between you and I, between a lot of the ethnic armies fueling their you know, basically funding their fight with opium sales and things like that, it was like this wild west. And excuse me.
Yeah, have you ever come back to Burma?
I haven't been to Burma since I was 26 years old and I broke my neck.
Okay.
Between you and I supposedly somebody's working on an amnesty deal so I can go back.
All right. All right.
I became very outspoken against the government when I was there, and at one point I became a non-favored person.
Right. Yeah,
I actually spent the week in custody of the military police, and it wasn't fun.
Well, okay, so you were arrested.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Saya, I have a couple of questions that I really want to know. First of all, you just said that you are married and you have children, right?
Yeah, I have 2 stepchildren.
What do they think about you at your age, fighting and all that? Like they support you, or they understand that?
Everybody, I'll be honest with you, I was married before, and even though my wife met me as a fighter, I got married very young. My wife met me as a fighter, she hated the fighting. Okay, my wife now is my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. And right. It's kind of like I always say to her, like, every once in a while, how do I phrase this? You know, sometimes it creeps into my back of my head after an injury or a tough loss. Okay, and I'll look at her and I'll go, hon, am I crazy? You know, I am 57 years old. Okay, I've got so many injuries that they've added up to the point of ridiculousness. Am I fooling myself doing this? And her bottom line is always, are you enjoying it? And I'm having the time of my life. So she says, keep doing it. Now between you and I, my kids love it. Okay, especially my younger son, because I've trained him and he's competed a bunch of times. He's got about 100 grappling matches and 12 kickboxing matches. But it's one of those things where you know, they support me fully. My oldest likes to say I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Right. Well, yeah, I want to ask you.
Really trains.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that I have seen more videos of you doing jiu-jitsu and Naban instead of leadweight, and that's because of the age matter. Like because maybe doing leadweight is harder for you right now than doing Naban and jiu-jitsu, or why is the reason that you focus so much on ground fighting instead of leadweight?
Between you and I, it's the only thing left I can compete in.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Honestly, the problem is I could never go back. You know, I find kickboxing a lot harder on the body.
Okay.
In other words, you know, and don't take this the wrong way. Okay, I'm truthfully doing what I call half-assing it. You know, I work a full-time job, I have a family, and all of that comes first. Okay, so right now I'm an athlete in a secondary fashion. Okay, sometimes I'm traveling on business. I see there's a tournament in the area. Boom, I hop in the tournament. What the hell? I'm here anyway. Okay, whereas you can't do that. with kickboxing. The stakes are too high. Okay, and it's kind of like, you know, like I always tell people, I would probably, you know, anytime I've thought to myself of coming back, either in mixed martial arts or kickboxing, and I start to put myself through the beginnings of training camp, my body breaks down. Too much abuse.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can imagine.
Suddenly you're sparring a massive amounts of rounds. And it's kind of funny because back east, when I lived in New York, everybody thought of me as a kickboxer who could grapple.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Now out here, everybody thinks of me as a grappler who can kickbox.
Yeah. Okay. 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 That makes sense. Okay. So then you still do lead way, by like teaching lead way. Do you?
Oh yeah. All my mixed martial arts fighters come, you know, basically I train them in left way striking.
Okay. And like I'm really very interested in you coming to Mexico maybe next year if everything goes well. I would love you to have you here, and definitely I would like to have a Navan seminar and a Leadway seminar. It would be that possible?
Yeah, I would be interested in doing something like that, because between you and I, at this stage of my life, remember, I teach for free. Okay, for me, it's about everything I am came from what I learned in the sport. My success in business, my success in life, my success in my relationships, okay, came from the lessons I learned in this. So at this stage, okay, you know, I learned that, you know, when you're facing your own possible death, what happens is you start to realize there's three things that are important. One is your family, one is your memories, and the other is the lives you've impacted. Okay, so when I got better, life is all about my family. I'll do anything for my family. It's why I work. It's why I do, you know, it's why I do everything. Secondly, I make memories. I started water skiing again, windsurfing, doing all the things I love to do, almost like I was having a second teenagehood. Okay. Yeah. And of course I started to compete again. Okay. Because it's about, you know, at the end of it, it's about what you did, not what you had. Like you can have one nice car, you can have this, you can have that. But when you're laying in a bed thinking about dying, you ain't thinking about your car. You're thinking about that time you did this, that time you did that. Okay. And the other thing is, how are you in a position to help others? Okay. And for me, it's like if I volunteered at a soup kitchen, I can't cook. You know, people might actually die from my cooking. And I hate to clean. Okay, so with martial arts, I can help young guys coming up who maybe have it hard get on the right track by giving them a toolkit to build a better life for themselves, giving them the discipline. Okay, and I'll be honest with you, it's a bait and switch. Okay, because usually they come in because they want to be a fighter. Okay, most of them, yes, they do take a few fights, but most of them learn to live a better life as a result, end up getting a better job, getting married, and suddenly fighting's not as important to them. They still train, but it's no longer, oh, I want to be a professional fighter. No, suddenly it's I want to put food on the table for the two little kids I got.
Okay.
Okay, so what I say is I make all my fighters get a backup plan. And what I mean by a backup plan, in other words, you could be the best fighter I've ever seen. You could go for a job, step in a pothole, blow your knee out, and you're never quite the same. Okay, so you know, fighting is a very narrow window. And even if you're good at it, there's a lot of luck involved. Okay, so it's like I always tell people, have a backup plan. Okay, because between you and I, getting hit in the head is not a good career move. Okay, right. You know, it's kind of like even the guys in the UFC. There's a lot of these guys that are having a problem making ends meet because they fight maybe 2-3 times a year, and even if they're getting 40K, you know, you look at it, the government takes half right off the top. Then you got training expenses. Some of these guys are fighting 3-4 times a year and only making $30,000-$40,000 a year for themselves. Okay, it's not what people think it is. Everybody thinks fighting is a ring card girl on each arm and a championship belt around your waist. It's not. It's a life of sacrifice and denial. Like when your friends want to go out on a Saturday night, okay, you can't because you got to train. Okay, when your buddies want to have a few beers, you can't because you got to make weight. Okay, like, you know, just something like cutting weight. Somebody who hasn't done it has no idea what it's like. Okay, if you're cutting 15-20 pounds at the last minute, okay, it's a battle. It's a mental battle of wills. Okay, are you tough enough to sit in that heat, either the heated whirlpool or the sauna or however you want to do it. Okay, are you tough enough to pull that weight off before you absolutely quit? I've seen more guys quit in a whirlpool than I have them in the walk to the cage.
Yeah.
Okay, because you know, once you get down to that last few pounds, it starts to become agony. So like I always try to tell people, like, you know, it's not what you think it is. It's not this life of glory. It's a life of hard work. Now take yourself. There had to have been times in training where, okay, let's say you're going with somebody who and remember, there's a food chain to everything. Okay, you're going with somebody who's better than you, and you're getting roughed up, and then suddenly it dawns on you, why the hell am I doing this? He's kicking my ass, okay? And it's kind of like, that's what separates the people that love it from the people that don't. The people that love it love the fact they just found a way to up their game, okay? And that's why I always tell people, I learn more from my losses than I do my wins, okay? If I go out and win, okay, it doesn't really have something to come back to the gym with, okay? But if I lose, either I made a technical mistake that I need to correct, I saw something that I wasn't prepared for, or I made a mental mistake and I have to work on my mental game.
Right, yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Like for me, my biggest mistake is in grappling per se, and in striking too, although because I don't compete, I don't see it as much in striking because I'm not being pushed to the edge of my abilities. Okay, because remember, competition and training is very different. Training is fun. Competition is about winning and losing. In competition, you get pushed to that edge where you find out what you really have, what your game is really like. And I find my biggest mistake in competition is always mental. I'll be rolling with one of these 28, 29-year-olds, and I'll be doing well. I'll be playing my game, which is controlling them, you know, cooking them, making them suffer, and then going for something. And I'll start to play fast and loose and get caught. Okay, if I play fast and loose, now I'm playing their game, quickness, movement, and yeah, hey, at 57 years old, like I always joke around, I move like a banana slug. I went from being a speed merchant to slow. Okay, so now I'm slow and steady. And like I always say, if I keep my game slow and steady, like with striking, when I'm sparring with people, if I focus on my angles, if I focus on my structure, all of a sudden my counterattacks and my offense are much better. But if I'm sitting there focused on what offense or counterattacks I plan on using, now I'm playing a game of quickness. Okay, whereas I'm focused on my structure, my hands are up, my knee is in the proper position to shield a kick. Boom, 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 boom. I have a whole checklist I'm going through as I'm moving. Okay, if I'm doing that, then suddenly everything I'm doing is off of their mistake.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, I have one more question, and this is very important for me too. I really want to know, well, it's a two-part questions. First, if there is any Bando guy in the world, like maybe from like Jesus Vasquez from Spain, or Jean Roger, or Alain Fechet, or maybe Dr. G, or somebody in the world that have reached to you in order to do something together, or that never happened and everybody is like in their own path?
Actually, I had a very weird relationship with the Bando people. Okay, and this is not, this is partly my grandfather. This is partly how the Bando really came out to be during the
tell us about it. Yeah,
during the Reconstruction in Burma, and also because of my own youth and stupidity. Okay, now, please, this is not something, I'm not being critical of anybody, because I look at Bando and I see a lot of what I do in it. Okay, I practice the Kashin styles, okay, which are an ethnic style. So it's not, they don't consider themselves part of Burma. They consider themselves their own independent area. Okay, so it's kind of, there was kind of like a real roughness between the concept of Burmese and Kachin. The Kachin don't consider themselves Burmese. They don't like the Burmese. They're at war with the Burmese. So remember, some of that was indoctrinated into me at a young age. Okay, now my grandfather was over there during World War II and had a deep hatred of the Japanese. Okay, he's also Irish and had a deep hatred of the English. Okay, now remember what happened in Burma with martial arts. Okay, the English as a colonial power tried to get rid of martial arts completely. Okay, they outlawed the practice of martial arts. So the bastions of the martial arts became the ethnic groups that were hard to get to, like the Wa, okay, the Karen, the Kachin. Okay, they were the ones who were practicing martial arts in outskirts that nobody saw, and they weren't being arrested for it. Whereas if you practiced it in Rangoon at the time, you might get arrested by the English. Okay, because they did not want the Burmese practicing martial arts. Okay, so what happened from there is the Japanese then came in. Okay, and then the Japanese actually promoted martial arts, but they wanted it on a Japanese template. Okay, and that was actually the beginning of the modern version of Bando that was brought over here by Dr. Gee. That template formed on a Japanese thing. And that's when the belt systems came into play. That was a Japanese addition to the Burmese. Now remember, this is all, and I have seen some historical records, but most of this is oral tradition that I was giving. So I can't say it's gospel. It's just the knowledge that I acquired, and I've confirmed it with several people. Like, I don't know if you know Vincent Giordano.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
okay, he's confirmed a lot of it for me. I consider him one of the foremost experts on researching the Burmese martial arts. He's a good friend and a really great guy. I love Vinnie because I love the way he presents everything. In other words, like a lot of guys try to make it about like it's about me. I'm the man. Vinny's kind of like, no, this guy's the man. All I did was talk to him. This guy's the man. I love his approach to the martial arts. I really do.
Is there any possibility for you to contact me maybe in the future with him?
Yeah, definitely. I'll get together with him and we'll work something out because Vinny's a great guy and he just loves martial arts in general, but especially the bare knuckle arts.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That would be great for me. And for
I'll be honest with you. If I have a question on any Southeast Asian art, no matter how obscure, I reach out to Vinny and he knows about it.
Okay.
He's done a whole project on Indian wrestling. The guy knows more about Indian wrestling than anybody I ever met. Okay, and basically, what happened is, they reformulated it. And after the war, there was an attempt to bring, Burmese arts back, much as you're seeing right now with Lethwei and the attempt to capitalize on Lethwei, but that the government's trying to control what is considered Lethwei. Okay, in other words, it's kind of like a lot of the older masters have been pushed out of the picture in the rush to make money. And listen, I can understand that every martial art goes through it, but it's one of those things that my grandfather really did not like the concept of Bando because it had, in his mind, a Japanese taint.
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting, and that makes sense to me a lot. Okay, because I really wanted to know why you were so apart, because every one of the people that I have met respect you and admire you, but I have never been.
The only guy I've got, the only Bando practitioner I ever got friendly with, and it made me regret my history with Bando, was John Collins. Oh.
I'm sorry.
Just give it a second, it'll turn off. It's kind of funny. I had very little contact other than some weird contact with different members of, in the early years when I was teaching back in the 90s. Remember, there was me in the United States, it was me and the American Bando Association. And there were several people that were in the East Coast who were outright hostile to me. Okay, and it's kind of funny because being me, I'm a fighter. So I challenged them to fights, and suddenly it went away. Okay, so I just viewed them as, hey, they do what they do, I do what I do. Okay, I'm one of these guys, I don't get involved in politics. Okay, if somebody wanted to hate me at the time, they could hate me, I don't care. I don't know you, I don't hate you, I don't care. But it's just like, if you want to say, if you want to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, well, come and say it to my face, we can fight. Okay, in other words, because to me, martial arts, that's what it's about. If you tell me I don't do martial arts, hey, we can glove up and fight. Okay, but it's kind of like what had happened is I just stayed in my own little cocoon, and I moved out to Vegas 8 years ago, and out of the blue, John Collins was in Vegas. You know John, right?
Yeah. I know. He's not now, but yeah, I knew him.
Right. He reached out to me. We got together. I met him and his wife. We got together several times and we became friends. It was probably about 3 years before he died. Okay. Oh. And it made me regret not being more open to connecting with the Bando people. Okay. Part of it was my grandfather knew the truth about Dr. service. And there was a lot of animosity there about him and that whole thing about saying that he'd been in World War II, he'd done this, he'd done that, and are you aware of all of that?
Yes.
Okay, and listen, I don't want to kick a dead horse, but that was probably the biggest issue within the reason I stayed away from the American Bando Association, because my grandfather was so antagonistic toward his service record.
Okay.
Okay, and it's kind of like as I've gotten older and people from the American Bando Association have started to reach out to me, I've been a lot more open with connecting, because I realized that we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. Okay, we're trying to spread an obscure art. And I went from buying somebody else's party line, meaning my grandfather, to realizing that Dr. Gee has probably done more for the Burmese arts in this country than any human being alive. Okay, because in other words, you might have an issue with something, but when you look at the results, I'm one guy who has a tendency to be a hermit. Okay, I have not had the impact. He has a whole organization around the country that knows about the Burmese arts. And isn't that the end goal? Okay, the end goal is to show people that this exists, to show people that if they want to start this journey, there's something outside the realm of everything else. And I'll be honest with you, in purity, something I can tell you that I have found to be unique about the Burmese arts. Now, I'm somebody who actually fought in Thailand in Thai boxing and did well. Okay, using Burmese boxing, not Thai boxing. I used Burmese boxing. Okay, I was booed for doing takedowns. They were legal, but you didn't get points for them. Okay, but I would slam you so hard that by the third or fourth slam, it was really easy to break you in the clinch, because now your hips are going back to avoiding being slammed. I have a tendency, if I compete in something, I examine the rules and I figure out my best course of action to use those rules to my advantage. Okay, so I'm one of the few guys to ever use Naban on the world level in grappling. Okay, in fact, it's kind of funny. A guy came out from Burma and did a big article on the Myanmar Times 2 years ago about me. Okay, being the only person competing in the Naban on the world level. Okay, and it was kind of cool to have my face, 50-some years old, on the front page of the Myanmar Times. That, in other words, for me, I've been in Black Belt magazine, and it doesn't mean that much to me, but that meant a lot to me. Okay, because remember, that's where it came from. Okay, to me, that was like a really big, oh wow, that's cool. Okay, and it's kind of like one of those things where it's you do it. And, I try to tell people that, it's probably the single most holistic martial art I've seen. And what I mean by that is when I'm in guard, when I'm in butterfly guard, my sweep is actually my roundhouse kick.
Can you repeat the last part? Sorry, because I couldn't hear you.
When do you grapple at all?
Yeah.
Okay. My butterfly guard. When I have my hooks in, My sweeps from butterfly guard are actually my roundhouse kicks. There's a flow. My Kimura is my elbow. When I sit up for a Kimura, I'm actually throwing an elbow. Okay, so what I'm saying is one of the unique things about the Burmese arts is, or at least in the Kachin style of Burmese arts, there's a flow from the grappling to the striking. The movements are exactly the same. So if I'm working my roundhouse kick, I'm actually working my sweeps. Okay, so like I try to tell people, you know, if you start to look at it that way, if you start to understand the human body only moves a certain amount of ways. There's a certain way to generate power naturally. And one of the things that I've noticed is, or at least the style of Burmese arts I studied really maximizes the way my body works to achieve maximum in its strikes and maximum mobility in body motion.
Okay. Wow, that's very interesting. I mean, I have never heard about that, and I wanna try it, definitely. Hey, Isaiah, I gotta go now. If I could just spend the whole day talking to you, it is so interesting for me, and truly, for so many years, I really wanted to reach out to you and hear more about you, and now I want to know more.
reach out anytime, okay? Because you got me on the one topic I love talking about. I can talk about this, like, you know, I can talk about this for a week at a time, you know?
Thank you, and we will. It is okay for you if I can upload this onto my YouTube channel and talk to.
That's perfect. You know, put it any way you want.
Okay, thank you so much, Aya, and I'm gonna be in touch with you maybe next week. If you can contact me with Visa Giordano, would be the best thing ever. Also, and I will definitely take you into Mexico next year if you agree. To
definitely open to it once this whole COVID thing gets better.
Sure, yeah, would be great. As soon as the COVID let us do it, we will do it, definitely.
Okay, perfect. Listen, have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.